The studio always fell asleep the same way, lights cooling from white to silver, the curtain drawing like a velvet eyelid over another night of laughter. After the audience vanished and the band packed up, Johnny Carson would retreat backstage with a stack of blue index cards. They were his talismans, scribbled notes, names, memories. And on some nights, when he lingered longer than usual, he'd hold one card a little tighter, tracing the letters, like a man reciting a secret prayer. The card read, Bean. From 1962 to 1992, Johnny Carson was more than a talk show host. He was America's midnight confidant. He didn't just interview people, he orchestrated moods. He could turn silence into suspense, a pause into laughter, and a single raised eyebrow into national catharsis. But behind his famously guarded smile, Carson carried a quiet affection for a handful of guests who could truly play with him, and among them one stood apart, Orson Bean.
I have in my hands the envelopes. A child of 4 can plainly see. These envelopes are hermetically sealed. They've been kept in a mayonnaise jar since noon today on Funk and Wagnall's porch. No one knows the contents of these envelopes, but you, in your divine and sometimes mystical way, will ascertain the answers having never even heard the questions. Isn't that true?
Kiss me. Oh, excuse me.
Envelope number 1.
May I have silence, please?
Yes. Hermetically sealed.
Question is in the envelope. I shall divine the answer.
Earlier, Funk and Wagnall's porch.
Maybe 2.
Maybe 2.
It wasn't just that Bean was funny, though he was. It was that he could fill 6 minutes with story, rhythm, and grace without needing a setup or a script. He was, as producers called it, a talk show natural. And Carson, the most demanding judge of that art, loved him for it. Across 3 decades, Orson Bean appeared on The Tonight Show more than 200 times. And when Johnny needed a night off, he trusted Bean to guest host over 100 times, a privilege reserved for the few who understood Carson's rhythm as if it were music. Those numbers tell a story. But the real story lives between the laughs. Bean's charm was deceptively simple. He'd sit down, cross an ankle over his knee, and speak as though the cameras had disappeared. He told stories like a man building a campfire, careful kindling, a spark, then warmth spreading until the whole room leaned in. His most famous? The tale of how he got his name. On Carson's couch, he'd reenact it, young Dallas Burroughs, Boston nightclub, searching for a stage name that might stick. Someone shouted out Orson Bean, he'd say, and the audience would erupt. Every telling landed like new. Johnny always smiled that secret smile, the one that said, he's got them. Carson's tastes were precise. He liked storytellers who danced within the tempo, guests who knew when to land a punchline and when to leave space for a laugh. He didn't want chaos. He wanted symphony. Orson Bean played in tune. Johnny didn't need to say it aloud. He showed it in the most meaningful way a host could. He kept asking him back. But Orson Bean wasn't just charming. He was brave. His humor had an edge, a little mischief that made Carson raise an eyebrow and America laugh twice as hard. During the freer, looser 1970s, Bean sometimes pushed topics that made the Midwest blush: relationships, bohemian adventures, the strange turns of fame. Johnny would squirm, half appalled, half delighted. The band would snicker. And then, with impeccable timing, Johnny would deliver the rescue line that sent the crowd roaring. It was an unspoken choreography, the buttoned-up host and the mischievous raconteur waltzing on the line between propriety and play. That chemistry didn't come from luck. It came from experience, hard-won on Orson's part. Long before The Tonight Show spotlight, Bean had been blacklisted, his name brushed by suspicion during the McCarthy era. Work vanished, opportunities dried up, but he was too resourceful to quit. He turned to stage, radio, game shows, and small clubs, keeping his humor alive wherever a microphone waited. By the time he landed on Carson's couch, He was unbreakable. Every story he told was built from the rubble of reinvention. Carson, who hid his own scars behind charm and wit, recognized a kindred survivor. In Carson's universe, friendship wasn't declared, it was implied. He wasn't one for sentimentality or late-night phone calls. His affection was practical, even mathematical. If Johnny kept you in the rotation, if he let you fill in at the desk, it meant he trusted your instincts. It meant you could make America laugh without breaking his rhythm. And for Johnny, rhythm was everything. It's easy to say Carson loved Orson Bean, but the truth is more subtle. Johnny rarely said things like that out loud. What he did was show it. He laughed with him, leaned toward him, let him breathe. In a world where seconds of airtime were precious, he gave Orson minutes, sometimes entire segments, to spin gold. Watch the old tapes and you can see it, the micro-expressions, the comfortable pauses. There's a moment where Bean launches into a story, and Johnny, mid-interruption, realizes he doesn't need to steer. He folds his hands, leans back, and just listens. That for Carson was love, trust in performance. Even when Orson teased him, Johnny's amusement was genuine. Bean might slip in a risque double entendre, and Johnny would turn to the camera, mock scandalized. "This is a family show, Orson," he'd say, and the audience would howl. Then, when the laughter faded, Carson's eyes would glint, a tiny conspiratorial flash that said, "You got me again." It was the television equivalent of two old pros winking across a poker table. Bean's easy charm made him a fixture not just of Carson's show, but of American pop culture's collective living room. In the 50s and 60s, he'd been a game show panelist, a Broadway name, a witty guest at every dinner table. But The Tonight Show was where he found his home, a home Johnny let him decorate with laughter. Carson's colleagues knew what it meant when Johnny called someone a good guest. That was his highest praise. And Bean wasn't just good, he was reliable, funny, real. There was a small note in one of Carson's old scheduling memos, circled in pencil, "If in doubt, Orson, that says everything." Now, the title of this story, before his death, Johnny Carson revealed why he loved Orson Bean, suggests a confession, a quote, a headline moment. But Carson wasn't a man of declarations. He revealed his affections in patterns, not proclamations. His language was repetition, not rhetoric. The fact that Bean appeared over 200 times was the revelation. The fact that Carson lent him the host's chair, his sacred desk, over 100 times, that was the love letter. Handing someone The Tonight Show wasn't like lending out a coat. It was lending out your voice, your heartbeat, your audience's trust. Johnny did that for very few people. Orson was one of them. That is how Carson said, "I love you." They shared something else, an understanding of the secret intimacy of television. Both men knew that what made a segment sing wasn't the joke itself, but the illusion that the viewer had been invited into a private conversation. Bean could make a national audience feel like they were sharing a secret over coffee. Carson cherished that gift. He spent decades refining it. Together, they made it look effortless. By the late 80s, as Carson's pace slowed and his tenure neared its quiet close, Bean remained a familiar figure, a veteran who understood when to let the laughter breathe. Their rapport had ripened into shorthand. Johnny didn't need to cue him anymore. Orson knew the rhythm of Johnny's laugh, the exact second to pause before the punchline. When Carson retired in 1992, he left without spectacle, no tears, no long monologue of goodbyes. He folded his legacy neatly, like a man putting away a favorite tuxedo. In 2005, he passed away in his sleep, having given America 3 decades of laughter without ever fully revealing himself. But if you study the reel of his favorites, those who returned again and again, you can read his heart between the edits. And there, glowing bright, is Orson Bean. In Carson's quiet vocabulary, Orson Bean was family. 15 years later, in February 2020, Orson Bean himself left the stage, struck by a car in Los Angeles. He was 91. The headlines called him the Tonight Show favorite, the talk show storyteller. Carson's old friend. The public remembered the smile, the warmth, the voice that could turn any story into something golden. To the very end, he carried that same ease, a veteran of television's golden years who never forgot that humor was an act of generosity. And perhaps that's why Carson loved him most of all. Because for all his mystery, Johnny was a man of deep admiration for craftsmanship. He loved people who took laughter seriously. Orson Bean didn't chase fame or scandal. He pursued connection. He believed in the small miracle of making strangers feel a little lighter than they did before. Johnny understood that better than anyone. In Orson, he saw not just a guest, but a reflection of what he hoped television could be: warm, witty, and human. Imagine it again, the studio, long after midnight. The stage empty, the applause long gone. Johnny stands alone, flipping through his index cards. He stops at the one that simply says, Bean, name story. A small grin breaks the surface, weary but bright. He can hear Orson's voice in his head, telling the story as perfectly as ever. And for the first time all night, Johnny laughs, not the practiced laugh, not the broadcast one, but the quiet, grateful laugh of a man remembering why he fell in love with show business in the first place. When you strip away the legends and the late-night glow, what remains is something simple. Two men who loved the craft of conversation, who treated laughter like music, who gave each other space to shine. Carson revealed his love not in words but in rhythm, in the green light that said, "We're on," in the trust that said, "Take it away, Orson." And in the countless nights America fell asleep smiling because of them both. The curtain falls, the echoes fade, but the laughter they shared lingers, soft, steady, and timeless. Like an old blue index card tucked in a pocket, waiting to be found again, whispering one last time, Bean. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and comment down below, as it helps support this channel. Also, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell to get notified of our newest videos. Thanks for watching.